Welcome back to another lore video, everyone, and I know some of you may be thinking, two lore videos back to back, what's going on, and I get it. I enjoy talking about these little connections that I am able to make and these gaps that I've been able to fill in the blanks on throughout my time playing Destiny and reading lore tabs, whether it be on weapons, armor, or just in the books that were provided throughout the game. But this time around, I wanted to touch on a clue that really stood out to me when I was picking up the visions of the Traveler for Kvostov, and I included it in my last video, so if you watched the last video, first of all, thank you. Those videos don't seem to get as much views as the short form videos here on YouTube Shorts or TikTok, so I'm glad for anybody who's willing to take the time to hear me, yap away or embarrass myself in gameplay. But in the clip where Micah begins to discuss a whirling of colors in the universe, the two that she specifically identifies are carnelian and jade. Now, before I say anything, and of course you probably understand from looking at the thumbnail of the video, if you look at these colors in relation to Destiny, what is the first piece of information that comes to mind? For myself, seeing these two colors, and even hearing the color jade come out of Micah's speech, led me to Drifter immediately. But that is because his entire being and presence and Gambit, everything has always had to do with jade. Gambit Jadestone. And then with the ornament for Malfeasance, Red String has a jade weapon that's, pretty much tied together with the jade medallions and his red string. But as it's noted on Malfeasance, it's noted as the red string of fate. Even this season's Gambit Fader is called Jade Murmur. So hearing that, you probably saw, if you paid close attention to my reaction when listening to it on the recorded clip that I had, I even typed into the chat for myself, Jade equals Drifter, question mark. It's a little bit of a joke, but I seem to have this constant spotlight on Drifter as a character. I am probably just going to end up calling it the Drifter effect, because he has been such a mysterious character where we've gotten quite a bit of his backstory. We've learned a lot about him with the invitations of the Nine, the season of the Drifter itself, and being able to solidify him within the narrative. However, Micah's speech here leads me to believe a few other things. For those of you who maybe haven't seen the last video, I'll go ahead and play it again here for you to get an understanding and then help connect some dots, and also obviously dive into what further effect I think Drifter has on us or previous effects that he's really been a part of.
I feel impressions of the traveler's experiences in this object. I can see them. I will try to interpret as best as I can. This impression is jumbled, faded, ancient. I see stars, a haze of cosmic energy, carnelian and jade whirling into infinity. Fear. Hope. Then, an abrupt severance, something lost, or someone. It isn't clear. Dust clings to the air like motes of starlight, glittering. A new distinction between what is and what was, but a tether remains indivisible. Light casting a shadow, and shadow defining the shape of light. Then... No. Nothing. It's gone. I'm sorry.
You did your best. Thank you for trying.
Those colors. I feel like I've seen them somewhere before.
in a half-remembered dream.
This may be an ancient memory of the Traveler. Something from the dawn of time. Maybe so old as to have no significance. And yet, I cannot help but wonder.
So, with that, as you saw, Micah mentions that it is a sort of universal effect. It's something in the stars that's occurring. But she also touches on a separation, a loss of someone, or something, as well as an unbreakable tether between two people. So for me, and apologies if my voice is a little more hoarse than normal, I've had quite a busy weekend, talking a lot, so I'm getting through this with as much water as I can. But for me, this signified the instance whenever we saw long ago in the Invitations of the Nine with the Season of the Drifter. We got a glimpse into what occurred between Drifter and Orin. For those of you who may need a little bit of a refresher, Orin was the name of the emissary of the Nine before they became the emissary, as much as the lore has led us to believe. Orin was an Awoken, I believe, if I remember correctly, part of the Queen's Wrath. Someone will have to correct me on that if not, but Drifter and Orin became close, very close, between their friendship and their relationship, but that was at a time where Drifter was going by the name Wu Ming, which many keen-eyed individuals have translated this in Chinese to generally mean no name or anonymous. So he genuinely called himself no one, essentially. And in the interaction that we get to see in the Invitations of the Nine, we see what is occurring after Orin has met Callum, one of Drifter's friends. And of course, for background on Callum himself, you would have to dig very, very, very deep into Drifter's lore, but not only Drifter, you would have to dig into Dredgen Yor's history. And that I will let anyone who is interested go through the plenty of information that there is on Dredgen Yor, the Shadows of Yor themselves, the darkness part of the Guardian's history that existed long before, that followed the creation of Thorn, and further past that point. I'm sure there's plenty of videos out there that also cover this information, but Callum himself was a void-wielding guardian that was a member of the Vanguard before becoming involved with the Shadows of Yor, which was a group that worshipped Dredgen Yor and his ideals. And obviously Callum and Drifter at a certain point were part of the Shadows and were both Dredgens. So Orin finds out about this reputation through Callum, because Callum is following Drifter, trying to figure out what is he doing? Why is he running? Why is he trying to hide? Why is he trying to move away from his old life? Callum was under the alias Dredgen Cull, and Drifter's name was Dredgen Hope. You may have noticed that later on in Micah's speech, she mentions fear and then hope. Now, this may be a stretch, but I still connect that to the fact that Drifter's name was Dredgen Hope. However, Orin was not happy about this information. Drifter, Wu Ming at the time, had never revealed this part of his past. He was ashamed of it, and we can tell that in the interaction that we see. But I will roll that interaction again from the recording that Destiny Lore Vault has. Thankfully, they have lots of helpful interactions and in-game occurrences recorded so that we can review this and see this once again. So I'll let you guys view that again and see if you connect any other dots.
I'm leaving. I'm going to go find them.
There is nothing out there for you, Orin.
Please don't pretend you care. This is a courtesy, Dredgen.
I don't use that name. Not anymore.
Your friend Callum says otherwise.
Hand to my heart, I'm not lying.
You can't even hear yourself.
Orin, please!
I'm going, Wu Ming. This friendship, whatever you want to call it, it's over. Try not to get shot.
You want to go back to 1,000 years of the Traveler's Dogma, kid? Give up your freedom? Fine. You do you.
Now, of course, after this, Orin's plan was to essentially voyage the stars, deep into space where no individual had gone before, in search of the Nine. She was obsessed with the Nine, the ghosts of the universe, trying to find them and give some sort of substance to the legend. I'm sure there are plenty of us that possibly feel the same. With those fleeting feelings around the Nine whenever they do appear, whether it's Zur or the Emissary. But as far as we understand, whenever Orin went traveling into the void of space after this interaction, she had to have come into contact with the Nine, or run across them in some way, as what we understand from Drifter's conversation pieces and Drifter's actions and reactions around the Emissary. The Emissary is Orin. She has been transformed from who Drifter originally knew as a close friend, a love interest for some of you, as you might put it, and she is now just a messenger. And I've seen some pieces between their conversations that maybe a piece of Orin is still in there. I'm not sure. Nothing solid enough to have written down or recorded and kept in mind, but if you guys have anything, I would love to hear about it in the comments. But with this being brought up by Micah again, and this really actually kind of giving more importance to this separation of Drifter and Orin, it's almost highlighting this for all of the players in order to get our attention. That maybe this had a darker effect than we were ready for, or a more impactful effect that we're ready for. And so I do believe at some point we're going to be returning to Drifter to ask some more questions. But with that, I've always had this suspicion of Drifter that obviously he's not telling us everything. We know he's not, because we keep finding out more about him, learning his backstory, and of course his very open resentment towards the Traveler at times for being revived after starving to death and being stuck in that perpetual hunger for himself. The only other piece that I can't seem to shake is whatever Drifter and his fire team ran into on that unknown planet. The planet he mentioned was obliterated by blizzards, where him and his fire team ran into monsters that if they came too close to you and your ghost would lose its light, fall out of the air, turn off, and be unresponsive if you were just simply too close to them. And maybe this connects to the Winnower as we know it now. Maybe it connects to something more important, but Drifter's stories of being on this planet with his fire team, which eventually led to him executing his own fire team, still has me in a weird sense of I want to trust this character, but I can't. And that's particularly because of what he did to his ghost, that I fear was closer to transcendence that a lot of us give credit for. Now, knowing about Prismatic and Transcendence, because Drifter took pieces of his fire team's ghosts after they hunted them down and finished them off, and attached it to his own. As far as I'm concerned, the Kit Bash shell, which I still have not gotten from an Eververse engram, thanks Bungie, is Drifter's shell. It's a shell pieced together by amalgamations of other shells tied up, but the light on the front of it is what gets me. As far as I remember, the Kit Bash shell has a red light on the front, and from Drifter's explanations, his ghost, when he put those pieces on it, ceased to conversate, ceased to talk. Red light could be, overridden back to blue for a bit, but then would return to red. And the ghost would just not speak. But with pieces of the lore that we have gone through, the only individual I know for a fact that has seen this ghost with their own two eyes is Erismorn. And she has seen it because Drifter, as he has his own little trauma from Orin and is having his, relationship with Eris here, he is making sure someone keeps an eye on his interest. And that watchful eye is his ghost. There was a lore tab, I can't remember when it was or where it was. I believe it was during Season of the Witch. I'm not entirely sure, but I remember reading a page where the ghost was following her around. And she knew, and she had seen it, but because it didn't talk and because it didn't really interrupt anything, she paid it no mind. With that, of course, anyone can correct me and hopefully lead me in the right direction, but I know for a fact reading that was important to me because we've never seen it. We assume when we know that he's a guardian and had a ghost, but we've never seen what he did, because then he would have to explain why his ghost doesn't talk, why his ghost looks the way it does, why it acts the way it does. But also his ghost is the one that's able to create these motes of light that are even mentioned by Micah in this speech, which I still think the motes play a much larger part than we don't understand, because it's baffling to me to know that once his ghost was changed, his ghost was able to take spectrums of light and trap this darkness that he was facing on this planet into those motes. And if that is really the case, that was an amalgamation of light and darkness before we ever hit this path of stasis, strand, prismatic. And so Drifter was really on that edge of prismatic before we ever got here. And so I'm hoping that if we do round back to Drifter, a lot of this will be explained and explored so that we can understand a little bit more about what this planet was and what may have happened after the fact that Drifter is left out. I just need to know what is the end game for Drifter as a character and as an ally. What part will he play? Because as far as we know, he's on his own side. He's on the winning side that he chooses each time, and we've been the winning side. So I'm hoping that, of course, we don't run into a situation where I've mentioned it before, and it's a little 50-50 theory I have that the 9 are more obvious than we like to think. We have titles: the Gardener, Your Gardener, the First Knife, the Winnower, the Drifter, the Emissary. These titles carry the same singularity to them. There's one of them. And so I have a theory on the back burner that the 9 are these singularity beings that call themselves one of something. Now, Drifter obviously doesn't exactly fit that description, but I mean, even with his ship, his random appearance, and his very complicated but very involved backstory with the universe seems to support that theory a little more. With that, that's what I wanted to touch on today, connect some of the dots for anyone else who maybe have thought the same thing, and also, of course, give everyone some light and some fuel to their imagination and their theory crafting. If anyone has some theories they'd like to put down in the comments, I do love to hop into the conversation and agree or disagree and use my opinions and previous experience, but I always enjoy the conversation as long as it's, of course, cordial, formal, and there's no attacks being thrown back and forth, because at the end of the day, we all have opinions, and they're all valid. None of them are wrong or right. A lot of them are just how we felt going through these interactions. So I hope you guys enjoyed this little touch on Drifter's continuing effect on our journey throughout Destiny's history and lore, creating our own way to continue, and hopefully I will see you guys in the next one.